For decades, marine archaeologists have discovered submerged structures that challenge our understanding of human history. From the crystal-clear waters of the Mediterranean to the unexplored depths of the Pacific Ocean, evidence of advanced civilizations rests silently on the ocean floor, guarding secrets that could completely rewrite our understanding of humanity's development. The first major discovery that shook the academic world occurred in 1968, when pilot Robert Brush was flying over the waters of the Bahamas and spotted perfectly symmetrical rock formations submerged in the crystal-clear waters of Bimini. What he photographed became known as the Bimini Road, a formation of limestone blocks arranged in a straight line for more than 700 meters, with each block weighing several tons and cut at precise angles that seemed impossible to occur naturally. Dr. Manson Valentine, a respected marine zoologist, was one of the first to dive to the site and examine the structures up close. His discoveries were revolutionary. The blocks were not only arranged in perfect geometric patterns, but also showed evidence of human work, including tool marks and fitting joints that suggested sophisticated construction techniques. Valentine meticulously documented his findings, collecting samples and photographs that unequivocally demonstrated the artificial origin of the structures. However, when Valentine attempted to publish his findings in established scientific journals, he encountered unexpected resistance. Editors rejected his articles without adequate review, claiming that his conclusions were too speculative or contradicted established consensus. This was just the first of many attempts to suppress evidence that could suggest the existence of advanced civilizations in prehistoric times. Similarly, in Japanese waters, another extraordinary discovery was being systematically ignored by the mainstream archaeological community. The Yonaguni Monument, a massive pyramidal structure discovered in 1986 by diver Kihachiro Arataki, presented characteristics that challenged all accepted theories about ancient Japanese history. Over 100 meters long and 25 meters high, the structure exhibited perfectly cut steps, tunnels, and internal chambers that seemed clearly of human origin. Dr. Masaki Kimura, a marine geologist at the University of Ryukyus, dedicated more than 2 decades to studying the monument. His research revealed not only evidence of human construction, but also associated artifacts, including what appeared to be stone tools and symbols carved into the structure's walls. Kimura determined that based on sea levels during the last ice age, the structure would have been built at least 12,000 years ago, much earlier than what was believed to be the beginning of organized Japanese civilization. However, when Kimura presented his discoveries at international conferences, he encountered organized skepticism and, in some cases, open hostility. Western colleagues quickly labeled the monument a natural formation, without even visiting the site or examining the evidence firsthand. Archaeological journals refused to publish detailed studies about Yonaguni, effectively silencing research on one of the most significant discoveries in modern underwater archaeology. This pattern of suppression became evident in similar discoveries around the world. Off the coast of India, underwater structures near Dwarka were initially hailed as evidence of the lost city mentioned in ancient Sanskrit texts. Indian archaeologists, including Dr. S.R. Rao, extensively documented the ruins, finding not only stone structures but also pottery and bronze artifacts dating thousands of years earlier than what was believed possible for the region. However, when they tried to collaborate with Western institutions for deeper studies, they found closed doors and denied funding. Joint research proposals were rejected without adequate explanation, and data collected by Indian archaeologists was often dismissed as unreliable by researchers who had never visited the sites. The systematic suppression of these discoveries raises fundamental questions about how scientific knowledge is controlled and disseminated. Why are concrete physical evidence ignored when they challenge established paradigms? Why do respected researchers face professional ostracism when they present data that contradicts accepted historical chronologies? And more importantly, what other discoveries might be deliberately hidden from the public? The answers to these questions begin to emerge when we examine the institutional and academic interests that benefit from maintaining the historical status quo. Universities, museums, and archaeological organizations have built their reputations and funding based on specific historical narratives. Discoveries that challenge these narratives not only question decades of established research, but also threaten careers, research funding, and the credibility of entire institutions. The result is a cycle of suppression where inconvenient evidence is systematically minimized, discredited, or simply ignored, while researchers who persist in investigating these discoveries find their careers at risk and their work marginalized by the mainstream scientific community. The Mediterranean Sea, cradle of ancient civilizations such as the Greek, Roman, and Phoenician, hides beneath its waters evidence of cultures even older and more advanced than previously imagined. Over the past decades, divers and marine archaeologists have discovered submerged structures that redefine our understanding of the technological and architectural sophistication of pre-classical civilizations. One of the most intriguing discoveries occurred off the coast of Alexandria, Egypt. In 1996, French marine archaeologist Frank Goddio began systematic expeditions in Alexandria Bay and made discoveries that exceeded all expectations. Not only did he find remains of the famous Library of Alexandria and the Lighthouse of Alexandria, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, but he also discovered an entire submerged city that seemed to predate the known Ptolemaic Alexandria. The structures discovered by Goddio included massive temples built with red granite blocks, some weighing more than 50 tons, transported from quarries located hundreds of kilometers away. The precision of cutting and fitting of these stones rivaled the best-known Egyptian architecture, but dating analyses indicated that some structures were significantly older than traditional dynastic monuments. Even more intriguing was the discovery of a system of canals and hydraulic gates that demonstrated advanced knowledge of naval engineering and water control. These systems were more sophisticated than any known technology from the Ptolemaic period, suggesting a continuity of technical knowledge that extended much further into the past than previously imagined. However, when Goddio attempted to publish theories about the possible age and origin of these older structures, he encountered significant resistance from the established Egyptological community. His suggestions that some of the construction techniques could predate the known pharaonic dynasties were labeled as irresponsible speculation, despite the physical evidence he had meticulously documented. Similarly, off the coast of Greece, submerged discoveries have challenged established chronologies of Hellenic civilization. Greek marine archaeologist Dimitris Kourkoumelis discovered, off the island of Zakynthos, stone structures that initially appeared to be ruins of a submerged ancient city. The formations included what appeared to be building foundations, retaining walls, and even what could be an aqueduct system. Preliminary analyses of the structures suggested they could date from the Mycenaean or even pre-Mycenaean civilization, potentially pushing back the history of organized human occupation in the region by thousands of years. The construction techniques observed showed a level of urban planning and engineering that was not credited to the pre-classical cultures of the region. However, when more detailed studies were proposed, Kourkoumelis encountered difficulties obtaining funding and institutional support. Greek and international universities showed reluctance to support research that could question established chronologies of ancient Greek civilization. Eventually, The structures were reclassified as natural geological formations by an expert panel that included few specialists in underwater archaeology, effectively ending future investigations. Off the coast of Turkey, similar discoveries have faced a similar fate. Turkish archaeologists documented extensive submerged ruins off the ancient city of Ephesus, including port structures and buildings that appeared to predate the classical city known from historical texts. These discoveries suggested a continuity of occupation and urban development that extended much deeper in time than previously recognized. Dr. Hayat Erkanal, one of Turkey's leading marine archaeologists, documented evidence of sophisticated construction techniques in these submerged structures, including the use of seawater-resistant mortar and drainage systems that showed advanced understanding of hydraulic engineering. Her discoveries also included ceramic and metallic artifacts that did not easily fit into established typologies for the region. When Erkanal presented her discoveries at international conferences, she encountered initial interest, followed by growing skepticism. Western colleagues questioned her dating methodologies and interpretation, despite her following rigorous archaeological protocols. Gradually, her discoveries were marginalized in academic literature, rarely cited in studies about the region's archaeology. A similar pattern emerged in discoveries off the coasts of Spain and France. Submerged structures that could represent ancient ports or coastal cities were initially investigated with enthusiasm, only to be later reinterpreted as natural phenomena when their chronological implications became controversial. The suppression of these Mediterranean discoveries seems to follow a consistent pattern. Initial discovery and documentation, preliminary scientific interest, followed by critical reassessment that frequently results in reinterpretation of evidence to minimize their implications for established historical chronologies. This reinterpretation process rarely involves new field investigations or deeper analyses. Instead, it is frequently based on the authority of established experts who may never have visited the sites in question, but whose academic position gives them power to influence the interpretation of discoveries that challenge accepted paradigms. The result is that the public never learns about the full extent of these Mediterranean discoveries or their potential implications for our understanding of ancient history. Information about these submerged ruins remains fragmented, scattered in obscure technical reports, or simply omitted from mainstream historical narratives that continue to dominate textbooks and popular documentaries. In the vast Pacific Ocean, where oceanic depths guard millennial mysteries, an extraordinary discovery has challenged our understanding of the capabilities of ancient civilizations. The Yonaguni Monument, located off the coast of the Japanese island of the same name, represents perhaps the most controversial and significant find in modern underwater archaeology, not only for its monumentality, but for the systematic resistance that its scientific investigation has faced. The structure was discovered accidentally in 1986 by Kihachiro Aratake, a local diver who was searching for new locations to observe hammerhead sharks. What he found exceeded any expectation: a massive pyramidal formation over 100 meters long, 40 meters wide, and 25 meters high, emerging from the ocean floor like a lost temple from a forgotten civilization. The architectural characteristics of the monument are extraordinary and defy conventional explanations about natural geological formations. The main structure presents step terraces with precise 90-degree angles, stairs cut into the rock with uniform steps, narrow corridors extending for dozens of meters, and internal chambers accessible through carefully constructed passages. Even more impressive are the flat and smooth surfaces that cover vast areas of the structure, some so perfectly leveled they appear to have been polished by specialized tools. Dr. Masaki Kimura, professor of marine geology at the University of Ryukyus, dedicated more than 25 years of his career to the meticulous study of the monument. His investigations revealed details that make it virtually impossible to classify the structure as purely natural. Kimura documented the presence of perfect right angles in multiple directions, something extremely rare in natural geological formations, which typically present irregular surfaces and varied angles due to erosion and sedimentation processes. Even more convincing are the artifacts discovered at the site and around the structure. Kimura and his team found what appear to be stone tools, including blades and points that show evidence of human manufacture. More significant still was the discovery of petroglyphs, symbols, and figures carved into the rocky surfaces of the monument that clearly could not be the result of natural processes. Among these petroglyphs, some of the most intriguing include figures that resemble animals, complex geometric symbols, and what appear to be human representations. One of the most notable is a figure that Kimura interpreted as a representation of an unidentified animal, possibly a type of reptile or amphibian, carved with precise details that include specific anatomical characteristics. The analysis of the structure's age presents even more revolutionary implications. Based on sea levels during the last ice age, Kimura determined that the monument must have been built when it was above the ocean's surface, which means its construction must date from at least 12,000 years ago, possibly reaching 15,000 years. This dating places the monument's construction in a period much earlier than what is believed to be the beginning of organized Japanese civilization or even agriculture in the region. This chronology has profound implications not only for Japanese history, but for our global understanding of the development of human civilization. If the Yonaguni monument is indeed a human construction from 12,000, 15,000 years ago, this suggests that civilizations capable of monumental architectural undertakings existed thousands of years before previously imagined. However, these revolutionary discoveries encountered fierce resistance from the international archaeological community. When Kimura presented his research at scientific conferences in the United States and Europe, he encountered organized skepticism that often bordered on hostility. Western archaeologists, many of whom had never visited the site, he quickly labeled his discoveries as misinterpretation of natural geological formations. Dr. Robert Schoch, a geologist from Boston University, was one of the most vocal critics, arguing that the monument's characteristics could be explained by natural fracture and erosion processes. However, Schoch's analyses were based on limited dives at the site and photographs, not the type of systematic long-term study conducted by Kimura. Even more problematic was how the controversy was presented in academic and popular media. Articles in mainstream scientific journals often presented the debate as a settled matter, favoring skeptical interpretations without giving adequate weight to the extensive evidence documented by Kimura. Documentaries and popular articles about the monument frequently included disclaimers that emphasized the controversy around the discoveries, effectively discouraging serious public interest in the research. This marginalization had significant practical consequences. Funding proposals for additional research on the monument were repeatedly rejected by international funding agencies, limiting future investigations, mainly to Japanese efforts with limited resources. International collaborations that could have brought additional expertise and advanced technology to the study of the site were discouraged or blocked by academic pressures. The treatment given to the Yonaguni monument illustrates a broader pattern of how archaeological discoveries that challenge established paradigms are systematically marginalized. Instead of encouraging rigorous scientific investigation of extraordinary evidence, the mainstream academic community seems to prefer maintaining interpretations that align with accepted historical chronologies, even when these interpretations require ignoring substantial physical evidence. The result is that one of the potentially most significant archaeological discoveries of the 20th century remains largely unknown to the general public, while its scientific investigation is effectively suppressed through subtle but effective mechanisms of academic and scientific control. The waters off the west coast of India in the state of Gujarat hide perhaps one of the most extraordinary and controversial underwater archaeological discoveries of the modern world. Here, in the depths of the Arabian Sea, Indian archaeologists discovered physical evidence of an ancient city that may validate accounts found in millennial Sanskrit texts. The legendary city of Dwarka, described in the epic Mahabharata as the magnificent capital of Lord Krishna. The search for Dwarka began seriously in the 1980s, when Dr. S.R. Rao, then director of the National Institute of Oceanography of India, initiated systematic explorations based on ancient textual descriptions. Sanskrit texts described a city of extraordinary beauty and technological sophistication, with elaborate ports, magnificent palaces, and advanced engineering systems that allowed the city to prosper in a challenging coastal environment. Initially, many considered Rao's search as archaeological fantasy, an attempt to use modern science to validate ancient mythology. However, his first discoveries quickly silenced the skeptics. In waters approximately 40 meters deep, his team discovered extensive stone structures that were clearly not natural formations. Fortification walls, building foundations, port structures, and a complex system of canals and dikes that demonstrated sophisticated urban planning. The structures discovered by Rao showed architectural characteristics consistent with descriptions found in ancient texts. Massive stone blocks, some weighing several tons, were arranged in precise geometric patterns that suggested advanced knowledge of structural engineering. The joints between blocks were so precise that, even after millennia submerged, they remained firmly connected without the use of mortar. Even more impressive was the discovery of an elaborate port system that included docks, breakwaters, and navigation channels. The sophistication of these port systems rivaled anything known from the ancient world, demonstrating advanced understanding of maritime engineering, including techniques to protect port structures against the destructive action of waves and ocean currents. Artifacts recovered from the site included stone anchors, terracotta seals with inscriptions in ancient scripts, pottery decorated with complex motifs, and bronze and copper objects that demonstrated advanced metallurgical techniques. Carbon-14 dating analyses of organic materials found in association with the structures indicated ages ranging from 3,000 to 5,000 years, placing the city in a period that approximately corresponded to the chronologies suggested by epic texts. Dr. Rao also discovered evidence that the city had undergone multiple phases of construction and reconstruction, suggesting continuous occupation for extended periods. Different architectural styles and construction techniques observed at different levels of the ruins indicated technological and cultural evolution over centuries or millennia. One of the most intriguing discoveries was the identification of what appeared to be remains of a fresh water supply system that included wells, reservoirs, and distribution channels. This system demonstrated sophisticated knowledge of hydraulic engineering and urban planning, allowing a large city to maintain a substantial population in a coastal environment where fresh water was a challenging resource. However, when Rao attempted to share his discoveries with the international archaeological community, he encountered significant resistance. Western archaeologists showed skepticism about Rao's interpretations, questioning both his methodologies and conclusions. Criticisms often focused on the apparent correlation that Rao made between his archaeological discoveries and ancient religious texts, arguing that this approach compromised scientific objectivity. This resistance seemed particularly problematic, considering that Western archaeologists regularly used classical texts, including works by Homer, Herodotus, and others, as guides for archaeological discoveries in the Mediterranean and Middle East. The application of different standards for Sanskrit texts suggested a cultural bias that limited acceptance of Indian archaeological discoveries. Even more concerning was the difficulty Rao faced in obtaining international funding to expand his research. Proposals for collaborations with Western institutions were repeatedly rejected, limiting his ability to use advanced underwater archaeology technologies that could have provided even more convincing evidence about the nature and age of Dwarka's structures. The marginalization of Dwarka's discoveries intensified when other underwater sites were discovered along the Indian coast. Off Mahabalipuram, in Tamil Nadu, divers discovered structures that appeared to be submerged temples, consistent with local legends about a city of 7 temples, 6 of which were said to have been swallowed by the sea. Similarly, submerged structures were reported off Pumpuha, also in Tamil Nadu, and near Bet Dwarka in Gujarat. Each of these discoveries faced similar skepticism from the international archaeological community. Standards of evidence that would be considered sufficient to validate discoveries in other parts of the world were consistently considered inadequate when applied to Indian archaeological sites that could validate Sanskrit textual traditions. The result was the creation of a double-standard archaeology, where discoveries that supported Western historical narratives were quickly accepted and celebrated, while discoveries that supported Indian historical traditions were subjected to extraordinary scrutiny and often marginalized, regardless of their scientific quality. This marginalization had consequences that extended beyond the archaeological field. The failure to adequately recognize Indian underwater discoveries perpetuated historical narratives that minimized the achievements of ancient civilizations of the subcontinent, contributing to a distorted understanding of global history that favored Western traditions over other equally valid cultural traditions. The systematic suppression of underwater archaeological discoveries that challenge established historical chronologies is not an accidental or casual phenomenon, but rather the result of complex institutional forces operating within the modern academic and scientific world. Understanding these forces is essential to comprehend why convincing physical evidence of advanced ancient civilizations continues to be marginalized or completely ignored by mainstream historical narrative. Control over scientific and historical knowledge operates through multiple interconnected mechanisms that, while rarely explicitly coordinated, create an effective filtering system that prevents controversial discoveries from achieving academic recognition or broad public awareness. These mechanisms include editorial control in scientific journals, research funding distribution, academic promotion structures, and influence over educational and popular media. Peer-reviewed scientific journals represent the first and most critical point of control. Editors and reviewers, often representing established academic institutions with significant investments in existing historical paradigms, possess discretionary power over which research is considered worthy of publication. Discoveries that challenge established chronologies often face extraordinarily high standards of evidence that are rarely applied to research that confirms accepted narratives. Dr. Michael Cremo, an independent author and researcher, has extensively documented this bias in his work on forbidden archaeology. His analysis of decades of editorial practices revealed that articles proposing controversial ages for archaeological discoveries face significantly higher rejection rates than conventional research, even when following identical rigorous scientific methodologies. Reviewers often reject such articles based on unacceptable implications rather than specific methodological flaws. Control over research funding represents another crucial suppression mechanism. Government agencies and private foundations that provide funding for archaeological and oceanographic research typically operate through review panels composed of established academics whose careers were built on specific historical paradigms. Proposals that challenge these paradigms face disproportionately low approval probabilities, regardless of their scientific merit. This dynamic creates a self-reinforcing cycle, where researchers who wish to maintain viable academic careers learn to avoid controversial topics or frame their discoveries in ways that minimize challenges to established narratives. Those who persist in investigating inconvenient evidence often find their careers marginalized, with growing difficulties obtaining academic positions, funding, or platforms to disseminate their research. The case of Dr. Robert Schoch illustrates both the possibilities and limitations of this system. Schoch, a respected geologist at Boston University, gained academic notoriety by proposing that Egypt's Sphinx showed evidence of water erosion that suggested a much greater age than traditionally accepted. While Schoch managed to publish his discoveries and maintain his academic position, he faced significant ostracism from the Egyptological community and encountered growing difficulties obtaining funding for additional research on the topic. Museum and educational institutions represent another level of control over knowledge dissemination. Major museums, many of which possess collections and displays based on specific historical chronologies, show understandable reluctance to incorporate discoveries that could require expensive and potentially controversial revisions of their permanent exhibitions. Similarly, textbook editors facing conservative educational markets prefer content that aligns with established curricula rather than including discoveries that could generate controversy or confusion. Popular media, while occasionally covering controversial archaeological discoveries, typically presents them through sensationalist lenses that emphasize mystery and speculation rather than rigorous scientific evidence. This approach has the dual effect of satisfying public curiosity while simultaneously discrediting the discoveries by associating them with entertainment rather than serious science. The result is a comprehensive system of knowledge control that operates not through explicit conspiracy, but through institutional inertia, career incentives, and financial pressures that collectively discourage investigation and dissemination of evidence that challenges established historical paradigms. This suppression has profound implications that extend far beyond academic archaeology. The systematic exclusion of evidence for advanced ancient civilizations perpetuates a distorted understanding of human history that may fundamentally misrepresent our species' capabilities and achievements. If civilizations capable of monumental architecture, sophisticated engineering, and advanced maritime technology existed thousands of years earlier than currently accepted, this knowledge could revolutionize our understanding of human development, technological progress, and cultural evolution. Moreover, the suppression of these discoveries raises serious questions about the integrity of scientific institutions and the reliability of accepted historical knowledge. If evidence can be systematically ignored or marginalized based on its implications rather than its quality, what other important discoveries might be hidden from public awareness? How can society make informed decisions about its past and future when access to crucial information is controlled by institutional gatekeepers with vested interests in maintaining specific narratives? The underwater archaeological discoveries discussed throughout this investigation represent just a fraction of potentially revolutionary evidence that remains marginalized by mainstream science. From the precise megalithic construction of the Bimini Road to the sophisticated urban planning of ancient Dwarka, from the monumental architecture of Yonaguni to the advanced engineering of Mediterranean ruins, a consistent pattern emerges of discoveries that challenge conventional chronologies, being systematically suppressed or reinterpreted to minimize their revolutionary implications. The time has come for a fundamental reassessment of how scientific knowledge is controlled and disseminated. The public deserves access to all available evidence about human history, not just the evidence that supports established institutional narratives. Only through open investigation and honest discussion of all archaeological discoveries can we hope to achieve a true understanding of our species' remarkable past and its implications for our future. The evidence lies beneath the waves, waiting for a scientific community courageous enough to acknowledge what the ocean floors have revealed about the true scope of human civilization. The question remains: how much longer will these truths remain submerged beneath layers of institutional silence and academic resistance?